Hey guys, Sandro here from Carcraft Auto Detailing in Melbourne. Welcome to part 4 of the step-by-step 3-stage correction and protection detail on this Giulietta QV. As I went through the steps of inspection, decontamination and trim rejuvenation in the previous videos, we have arrived at paint correction. I'm going to mostly cover how I do my testing with compounds, polishes, pads and machine choice in this episode, as well as determining what this paint is like in relation to hardness. But I'll also combine that with tuning the desired results to match what I'm looking to specifically achieve with this detail, which, as I stated before, it's a balance of the maximum defect removal without flattening or removing an excess amount of clear coat. So in other words, it's about chasing 90 to 95% correction, but also having the restraint to live and let live with some of the mid to heavy scratches and defects that would require a more aggressive approach. Just before we get into the test panel, I'm going to first finish up a couple of things, starting with the exhaust tips. I gave them a thorough clean with P21's polishing soap, and now I'm going to give them a polish to both continue cleaning the carbon deposits and bring a little more brilliance to the metal finish. The circular rim of the tip is always the worst affected area, as that's where the carbon buildup will go. Over time, and depending on the metal quality itself, the outer rim surface can begin to fracture as the carbon deposits eat into the finish, and that's what's happening to these tips. I'm giving the metal a light cut with CarPro's fixer and then finishing off with Reflect polish. The main difference between paint and metal polishes is that metal ones contain more chemicals to assist in oxidation removal and general cleaning properties. But as this metal is not suffering from oxidation and I've already given it a good clean, a standard polish and compound is fine to use. And one tip that I'd like to offer is just giving the exhaust tips a quick clean each time you wash the car, as the carbon should come off quite easily if it's not left there for months and years at a time. I also used a non-scratch pad to help clean these neglected tip rims and then just followed up with a cloth pad to refine the finish. I debated a bit whether to remove the rear Giulietta badge or not, but once I gave it a good inspection, it became more apparent that the excessive grime, polish and wax residue, together with the scratches in between that super intricate lettering, would be near impossible to correct with the badge in place. With a delicate badge such as this, it's really more likely that it will break when removed, but I'm still going to try and keep it intact. The idea with the heat gun is to soften the adhesive behind the badge, making it more pliable and easier to remove. This needs to be done slowly, as the heat needs to travel from the outer surface of the badge back to the surface where it's attached to. Use your hand to monitor the temperature. If it's too hot to touch, then it's too hot for the badge and the car paint, which can lead to melting the badge and possibly stripping the paint. When possible, I'll use dental floss to dislodge the badge from the panel. It will most likely break a few times, but it's far more gentle than fishing line, which sometimes is necessary for more stubborn badge removal. It's all about taking your time with both heating the backing tape of the badge and using the floss to separate it and repeating the process many times until you work through the whole badge. Once removed, give it a quick clean to remove the dirt and loose particles, and then it's time to remove the adhesive tape. The 3M rubber wheel is by far the quickest method, and although it may seem risky the first time you use it, it's really quite safe in the whole scheme of things. You really just need the lightest of pressure, keep the wheel moving in an up and down motion, and let it do the work. You're just trying to remove the bulk of the residue, so don't look for perfection at this stage, as the compounding step will further clean and restore the area. As I mentioned in the first video of this series, the rims, door handles and side mirrors were just painted. So the paint is going to be different to the rest of the car. Generally, paint is fine to correct straight after it's been applied, so long as it's been correctly cured, baked and so on. But giving it a little extra time isn't going to hurt. As you can see, there are quite a few swirls already on these freshly painted trims, which unfortunately is a reality when getting most panels repainted. So after some quick testing on these trims, I've discovered that the paint seems very soft and sensitive, which further explains the swirls. On a side note, I'll be curious to see if the rims that were painted at the same time with the same paint react the same after giving them a lot more time to fully cure. But anyway, the paint really didn't like Fixer or the microfiber pad, which really marred the surface. Reflect on a ShineMate 1-inch foam polishing pad, followed by Essence on a foam finishing pad, gave me the best results on the RUPES Nano at a mid-speed. This was able to remove a good 90 to 95% of those swirls, with just a few deeper isolated scratches left that I'm just going to leave alone. Another point I want to highlight is that using my inspection lights in darkness is fantastic at bringing every tiny defect to the surface. But under normal viewing, even in direct sunlight, these minor defects that look so much worse under this controlled lighting will be near impossible to spot. You'll be shocked the first time you see your car under this sort of lighting, and you could go crazy trying to correct 100% of what this lighting reveals. I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just saying it's also important to be appropriate and realistic at the same time. And don't forget that there's only so much paint on your car and only so many times you can correct at aggressive levels. Being that this car is a daily driver, will spend at least half of its time outdoors, be parked at the supermarket and have various people as passengers, this level of detail is perhaps already a bit more than is appropriate. But I too struggle sometimes with taking my own advice. So for video purposes, I've made this test a little more elaborate than I would normally, and I've masked the bonnet into 8 sections to better help illustrate my process. But I just want to note that masking tape itself does cause residue issues when applied in this manner, and the corners are difficult to correct properly without running into the next test section and altering the results. So basically, it's best to judge the center sections within the masking divides and not concentrate on the masked edges. Also, within each section, I'm leaving about a third of the paint untouched, so I can do a direct comparison between what I've corrected and how it was originally within each section. This is all about trying to find out which compound polish and pad combination is going to work best for this particular paint in these conditions. So starting from the least aggressive combination and working my way up, I'm trying to discover what sort of paint I'm dealing with and how it responds to various products and methods. I'm using the DAT6 DA with a 21mm throw, 5-inch pads, and trying to stay as consistent in my technique as possible to better compare results. I'll be doing 2 sets of 4 passes with all the products at this stage and paying close attention to things like the level of defect removal and the clarity of the finish. I also want to note that all the pads are primed with the product before the first pass, they are blown out with compressed air after each set of passes, and the panel is given an IPA wipe down with a razor before inspection. These steps are taken now and when the whole car is corrected to remove as many variables as possible and keep things consistent as not to alter or falsify the results. First up is CarPro Reflect on their gloss pad. Normally I wouldn't start with a non-abrasive jeweling or waxing pad, but I want to use this to help show and explain that even this pad is going to give me valuable information. After the first set of 4 passes, I'm already seeing a difference and improvement in the finish. It's only very slight, but nonetheless a step in the right direction. The second set of passes have slightly improved on the first set, but only marginally. What this tells me is that this polish and pad combo is going to give me about 20 to 30% defect removal, and that this paint isn't a super soft one, nor is it rock hard, but that's all I can bank on at this stage. Next up is Reflect on the CarPro polishing pad. After the first set of passes, just as you'd expect, it's providing more defect removal, but nothing at this stage like what I'm chasing. The second set of passes do again improve on the first, but again, it's a very slight improvement. And at best, this is achieving still less than a 50% reduction in defect removal. What this tells me is that it's really not a soft paint at all, but I still don't know exactly how hard it really is. Onto the CarPro microfiber cutting pad. After the first set, I can see a good 50 to 60% reduction of defects straight off the bat. But after the second set of passes, it's still no better than a 60 to 70% improvement at best. The thing is that the light swirls are generally easy to remove, but hidden within those swirls are more isolated mid to heavier scratches that surface much better once you remove the majority of the swirls. And that's where both the extra work and aggression is needed to remove or at least reduce them in severity. I'll also note that if I was doing a one-stage polish, this combination of Reflect and the cutting microfiber pad would be a great choice to achieve great results. The final test with Reflect is on the company's COOLPAD, which is a microfiber wool blended pad. In relation to defect removal, this pad is perhaps a touch better than the microfiber one, but both seem similar on this paint. The biggest difference, however, is how this pad is finishing. It's leaving some very slight marring in the form of holograms in the finish. What this tells me from previous experience with this pad is that the paint isn't as hard as your classic German paint, but the microfiber pad finishing down so well in the previous test tells me it's not a soft paint like your classic Japanese ones. So bit by bit, even before I've tried a compound, I'm already beginning to understand how this paint is behaving and its characteristics. First up with CarPro's Fixer compound is the gloss pad. Although this is an unlikely match, I wanted to use it to demonstrate a point. Hopefully you can see that by the second set of passes, this super soft, non-aggressive pad is actually slightly marring the finish but without achieving much in the form of defect removal. So it's really a lose-lose situation. The thing is, when a pad is overly soft and non-aggressive, that's great for finishing and drilling paint. But with a compound, it's just too soft to create a flat uniform finish. And with DAT abrasives such as fixers, it struggles to effectively break it down in a uniform fashion, resulting in a varied and flawed finish. Next up is fixer with the polishing pad. This is actually a great combo for the paint. It's producing a decent cut, yet finishing down very well. And again, this is another great combination for a one-stage polish, achieving a good 70% or more defect removal with just 2 sets of passes. The fact that with a more aggressive compound and an intermediate pad, I'm still finishing down really well, but not removing a higher percentage of defects, it tells me more confidently that this is a medium to hard paint, which is generally good to work with. The microfiber cutting pad with fixer is looking more like it in relation to both increased defect removal and a relatively good finish. 2 passes is actually getting really close to the 90 to 95% correction rate that I'm searching for. And I'd say quite confidently that a 3rd pass would definitely get me there. The last combo I'm trying for this test is fixer with the COOLPAD. Just like the comparison with the COOLPAD and the microfiber pad with REFLECT, the COOLPAD does have a slight edge in defect removal, but the microfiber pad is just finishing down so much better without the increased haze and light holograms. At this stage, I'm going to further refine the finishes on the best 4 results I've achieved. The first 2 will be just to discover what the best 2-step process is while I'm here for future reference, while the last 2 will decide what I'm using for this 3-stage correction. So after comparing REFLECT with the microfiber cutting pad finished with essence on the gloss pad versus fixer on the polishing pad finished with essence on the gloss pad, I'll firstly say that both combinations work great for light defect removal, producing excellent finishes. But with a slight edge, the winner for me was REFLECT on the microfiber pad jeweled with essence. So the final 2 best combinations for this correction were fixer on both the microfiber cutting pad and the COOLPAD. The second stage of both lighter cut and refinement were done with REFLECT on the polishing pad, and the final enhancement jeweling stage was done with essence on the gloss pad. Again, these are both great combinations that I know I can fine tune to make each of them work on this paint. It's more of a personal choice when you get down to it. The truth is that the microfiber pad is going to need on average an extra set of passes to get to the level I'm searching for. But the refinement with the second stage is achieved much easier with a single set of only 3 passes needed to get there on average. Whereas the COOLPAD will need less time and passes in the cutting stage, but then requires more time and passes in the second stage to refine the finish. I hope you're still following me and this makes sense. But overall, when both finishes are excellent and really hard to separate, it basically comes down to where I want to spend more time, in the cutting stage or in the finishing stage. Being the person that I am, I like to get the bulk of my work done firstly, and for me, finishing when possible should be less cut and more refinement rather than the other way around. So the CarPro microfiber cutting pad with 2 to 3 sets of passes, followed by 1 set of passes with Reflect on the polishing pad and finished with a dueling stage of Essence on the gloss pad, is my winning combination on this mid to hard Alfa Romeo paint. Well, that wraps up part 4 of this series. In the next episode, I'll be applying and fine-tuning my test results to get the most out of them when correcting the diverse panels of the car and using different size machines and pads. I really hope you enjoyed and found this video useful. Please like, comment and subscribe to show your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.